Well, hello everyone again. I'm doing another video quite soon. I just did one a couple days ago, and I was inspired to discuss one of the themes in A Course in Miracles that can be quite confusing to people. So the title of this talk is called There Is No World. There is no world. This is one of the ideas that the Course talks about and explains why this is the case. I've had many people ask questions about this, and because the world we appear to see does feel very, very real. And everything in our experience tells us it's true, that this world is true. And it becomes our only reality for a while. That's because we forgot the other world. We forgot reality. And there's a reason for that, and I'll get into that as well. So I thought I would start off by really getting into it, actually. What the Course means by that. And when the Course says certain statements, like there is no world, that would be considered a definitive statement. There are many definitive statements in the Course that should be taken literally, and that's one of them. The Course is also written on two levels. It's written in metaphor as well. That's why it can be confusing to people, because Jesus, again, who's the voice of the Course, addresses us where we believe we are. You know, we believe we really are walking around in these bodies in a world that's outside of us, and that's understandable. That we would say, well, gosh, everything in my experience tells me that this world is real. There's no doubt that your experience is real. You are experiencing the world as real, but it doesn't make the world itself reality. Because our minds are choosing constantly what we're perceiving, what we choose to see. For example, we normally perceive things just with our five senses. And there is so much more to the world and to really how we're perceiving things than just the five senses. If we're only limiting ourselves to seeing people and the world with our five senses, then we will not be able to experience or see things that are beyond that, beyond what we think this is the only reality. There's much more, even in this world of illusion, there's much more that we're not able to see because it's been blocked out by mind training, by sort of brainwashing, dumbing us down, that, we are only these very limited, little creatures that aren't powerful. We're actually taught this a lot in our societies. And we're not taught this directly. And I believe there's so many people that mean really well. And they, it's just that it's very easy when we are born into an illusion, in a world of time and space. It's very easy to get locked in and sucked in to then what society tells us we should do, or how we should perceive things, or even how to judge properly. And we really, really don't know anything. The Course is saying we really don't understand what we perceive. That's why Jesus says things like, be like little children. they don't understand what they perceive, so they ask what it means, right? They're innocent. They're just like, I don't know what this means, so they ask. And he's saying, we can be like that, and it would be helpful if we did have that sense of wonder and didn't always, don't always assume we really understand what we perceive either. So we should ask the Holy Spirit what it means. But there's a line in the Course that says, there is no world. You're merely mentally reviewing that which has already gone by. That which has already gone by. Why is that the case? Well, A Course in Miracles explains that in that tiny instant, the tiny tick of time, the tiny mad idea that I've referred to before in my talks, where it appeared as if a part of this oneness, this all perfect oneness, that it appeared as if the Son of God, which is called Christ in the Course, had a kind of what if thought. Like, what if I could play on my own for a while? In other words, sort of leave my home in God, leave heaven, and kind of make up my own, right, world. That tiny tick of time, that tiny mad idea, was the very seeming beginning of our experience that somehow we really did separate from our source. In that tiny tick of time, we didn't realize how vast of an error that was, and what that would end up producing, an entire world of time and space, which really is a projected from the mind to now hide from God, because the ego told us a story. It's just a story, but the ego told us a story, and the ego part of the mind is referred to in the Course as the part of the mind that really believed that it did happen. That tiny mad idea where we thought we could play on our own for a while, we ended up listening to that and making that very real, more real than our reality. And so we forgot, and the ego was afraid, became frightened, and then felt that, right, made up this whole story about God now is going to punish us for that, what now is called, we call the sin, the great sin, which is really the idea of separation. So we thought that we sinned, so we felt we had to hide from that sin. And so what happens when we feel guilt now from that too, guilt and fear, that gets repressed, pushed down in the unconscious mind. And when that gets pushed down in the unconscious mind, it's going to have to be denied and then projected out. And that's what happens when we repress things and deny them. They're going to get projected out because it's too painful to go back to that place and deal with it and then choose again and remember our reality. Because the ego told us a story that if we remember, go back to the mind and remember our reality, that God is going to punish us. So the Course is saying the complete opposite of that, because God is perfect love, and saying there is no sin, and because it's saying nothing happened. But the reason why it says the world was over long ago is because in that tiny instant, tick of time, the tiny minute where we chose that instead of remembering just to stay, right, kind of be in that reality where we always are, even still now. The whole world of time and space, past, present, what we consider past, present, and future, all got projected out at that seeming instant. Because time is holographic. It's not linear. The past, present, and future are one. Space and time are one idea in the mind. But everything in the entire universe, multiverse, universe of universes, all of it here that we consider like part of the universe was all projected out at the same time. But in that instant that it was projected out, God gave his Holy Spirit, which was the answer to that thought of separation. And that answer is, right, nothing really happened. You're still at home in God. The Holy Spirit is that voice for us, that mediator between now what appears to be us in this world, right, and our real self, which is in God, the Christ that is in God. So the reason, again, it says the world was over long ago, because it happened all in that one tiny tick of time, the world, but then it was corrected by the Holy Spirit, the great corrector of time. The Holy Spirit, in that instant that we chose the ego, and then from that, snowballed into making up a world of time and space, because it was corrected in that instant, it didn't really happen. And that's why Jesus says, well, the world was really over long ago, because it was corrected. It's just that we didn't side with that correction. We chose as one mind to side with the voice of the ego that thought we really did separate, and we made up a world of time and space to hide now from God, calling him a punishing God, an vengeful God. So now that we're mentally reviewing the world that it was over long ago, because first of all, the Course says it didn't really happen. It's just like an illusory, it was an illusory thought of separation. That's why it didn't really happen, because it was an illusion. So what we do with that is bring that illusion to the Holy Spirit, which corrects our misperception that we're really separate from our source. And it's also referred to in the Course as the Great Comforter, because when we choose the Holy Spirit as our teacher now, instead of the ego story of sin, guilt, and fear, that we made up this world, which was really made by that thought of separation. The world wasn't made by love. It was made from a thought of separation, thought of sin, guilt, and fear. That's why there's so much conflict in the world. That's why there's so much conflict. That's where it comes from. This is what the Course is explaining to us. This is not coming from me alone. I'm saying this is what A Course in Miracles and Jesus is telling us in his Course, is that now what we want to do is remember, because there's no outside, there really is no world. It's because it's a projection. It's like a movie screen. There's nothing really on a screen, right? When you go to the movie theater, you're not really seeing and interacting with those figures. It's the screen. So nothing's happening on the screen. You're watching a movie. What's happening is happening in your mind, and in the movie scenario, it's like, where are the images coming from? They're coming from the projector in the movie theater, not the screen. So if you want to change what's on the screen, and you can call it the script of your life, the world that you see, if you want to change that, you go back to the mind to remember that you're mind, and the whole world was in your mind. It's not out there somewhere. It's in your mind, just like the projector projecting the movie. The decision-making part of your mind that chooses between the ego thought system now and the ego story of what appeared to happen, there's that part of mind. Then there's the Holy Spirit's correction for that, right? The atonement principle that says nothing really did happen, just a tiny thought. And it was like a little blip in time, right? A little blip of a second, of not even a second, just like a blip. And then, but reality just kept on going, keeps on going. I'll put it in the present because there's really no past. Reality just keeps on going. And so we're merely mentally reviewing a world that we've already reviewed in just an instant. It was reviewed, but we sided with that. So now we made them, so then now we're appear to be born in all these different bodies, right? And the body becomes the hero of the dream, and we make everything very real here. And again, this is understandable. There's no cause for guilt about this. The Course says there's no cause. The cause is gone. What we thought we did and sinned against God and made up this whole world of time and space and all the pain involved in it, and the conflict and the fears and anxieties, and we all go through dark nights of the soul, and we all have that. I have that. I've been very candid about more recently about some things I've experienced and I am experiencing, and I could call that a dark night of the soul, because I'm really, really looking at some things that are not comfortable to look at. And so I too am part of that. And so I understand what it's like to go through a dark night of the soul, or how scary things can feel. Even as a Course student and even as a Course teacher, I can relate. I can relate to the idea of what it feels like to feel pain, right? To feel really, really fearful, just like anybody else. But what a relief that the Course is telling us that even though it's not always easy to practice these ideas, I want to make that clear. I really get it. It's not easy always to practice or to remember to laugh, which is one of my more recent videos. Sometimes in times when we feel pain or we're going through a hardship, it's just nice to know that choice is available. That's the key. Not that it might not be hard, right? Sometimes to change our minds, but if we just have that foundation and know that choice is available, and we can always choose it. We have that power. That's what free will is in the Course. It's the power to choose. The power to choose. What are we choosing between? Only two things: the ego's thought system or the Holy Spirit's thought system. They're mutually exclusive states of being. So when we choose the Holy Spirit, we remember we're dreaming. We remember, I made this. This is my dream. And the world was over long ago. And that tiny tick of time where we appeared to have that tiny mad idea, I just happened to choose the ego, but I don't have to feel guilty for that. There's no cause for guilt. Why? Because reality remains reality. God remains perfect love, no matter what this appeared to happen, in this illusion. God, according to A Course in Miracles, did not create the world, did not create suffering, did not create pain. God is an all-loving God. God is perfect love. We call it God, or you can call it Source. You can call it, if you have a different way of saying or referring to that, use whatever term that you like to use. The words are just symbols. It doesn't matter what you call it, or even the Holy Spirit. This is just those that follow A Course in Miracles. This is what Jesus is calling it. Doesn't mean everyone has to call it that. And again, there are many paths to awakening. There are many paths to God. There are many paths to the way home, leading us home. A Course in Miracles is a unique path because it really discusses what appeared to be the problem. And it says there's only one problem. That's the separation, this belief in separation, and one solution. And that's the answer, the Holy Spirit's atonement principle that said, nothing happened and you didn't really separate. But all the problems we have in the world, including the belief that there is a world, all of that are just spin-offs from that one belief in separation. They're just spin-offs. And the reason why Jesus could perform all these miracles and do the things he could do is because he knew the world was an illusion, and he understood where, he remembered God. He remembered where he came from. And so he wasn't bound by these rules of the world. He transcended them. And he basically was walking the world, but knowing he wasn't of the world. And he was just able to get to that place. And he already had come into the dream, sort of appeared in the dream a little bit further along in that understanding, although he had other illusory lifetimes as well. He just came into the dream with a bit, just like Buddha did, with a bit more of that awareness. So they were questioning in other lifetimes things more, like about this world, and this can't be the real world, that kind of thing. This can't be the real world. There's got to be something more. So the world was over long ago, and I like to say that to myself as a reminder if I feel something, difficult is going on in my life. I like to remember that and say, you know what, if the world was over long ago and I'm mentally reviewing that which has gone by, I'm seeing all this in my mind and it's my dream, well, then I really can work on changing my mind about it. I really can start thinking with the Holy Spirit. And that takes practice. I mean, it really does, to dim the voice, turn the dial down of the ego's voice, just like turning a dial gently down. You can start gently, thought by thought. In every situation, just take it thought by thought, dialing it down. Imagine a dial. Maybe it's on 20 and you're just dialing it down a little bit. Maybe you can get it to 19. All the raucous shrieks of the ego and what the story the ego's telling you. If you feel anxiety, I'm familiar with some anxiety. I'll be candid about that. Part of one of my forgiveness lessons in this lifetime has been anxiety and panic attacks, things like that. So I can certainly understand how that feels and how difficult it can be to change the mind sometimes. At the same time, I have shown myself that I can do it. So that means that that's in me. And if that was in Jesus, was showing us it was in him. He also was showing us it's in all of us. We all have the capability, the potential to do that. And even in the most fearful situations, we have the power. We are powerful spiritual beings having a human experience. And as I said in former videos, it doesn't mean we're going to, not be normal here and neglect our lives and live your normal life. If you want to get married, you get married. If you want to have children, you have children, right? It's just, that would be part of your script. And we're appearing to be here because we're learning lessons. And we can, now that we appear to be in a world, even though it was over long ago, we're reviewing it in the mind level, but we can review it with the Holy Spirit as our teacher, or Jesus, or whoever you want to use as a being or source that helps you to feel that inspiration, that comfort, that joy that you really are. But the Course says, and it can sound negative, but the Course is not a negative course. It's just might seem negative sometimes because it's having us look at our ego thoughts. It's having us look at the ego, which can be so dark and vicious, right? It can bring us to some dark places. So it's having us look at the ego so that way we can actually see, right? Bring those thoughts to the surface in a safe space, right? In a safe place, safe space. But we need to look at it so that we can bring it to the surface, so we see what we're choosing, so then we can say, I see what's happening and how I came to be where I am and why I'm feeling this way. I didn't realize I was choosing these ego thoughts the whole time, which is bringing me more pain. And now I can hold Jesus's hand and choose again and say, wait, there's another way. There's another way to look at these thoughts that I'm having. It's quite something to really learn that we've made this world as one mind. That includes anything in this world that you can anything that you can think of was made by the thought of separation. So the things that we see in the world now, even the things that are beautiful, it's not that we shouldn't enjoy them. We should. They can be beautiful symbols of the Christ, or symbols of the Holy Spirit that remind us of beauty, the beauty that we are, of truth. So it's not that we can still enjoy nature, right? We're part of nature in this dream. So why not enjoy it? We can enjoy going to the ocean. We can enjoy a beautiful sunset. We can enjoy taking trips, places. We can enjoy our family members and friends and going out and having fun. And you don't have to give up anything. That's what the beauty of this course is. It's not asking us to give up anything, not your job, especially, we want to remember that. If there's a little sound right now, a little glitch, it's because my phone is ringing. So I hope you can still hear this as my phone is ringing right now. Okay. So what I was saying is that we can still enjoy the beauty around us. They're symbols of the beauty of the Christ in us, and the beauty that awaits us when we awaken back into God, into Source, into that perfect oneness. So Gary and I do our best. We've always, done our best to remember that, and to remember we can have a good time. And sometimes, you can have even more of a good time if you remember that this world isn't really the real world, and we don't have to take it too seriously. In other words, I've even heard beings on the other side, once they get to the other side and people make their transition, it seems like one of the biggest messages that comes through, when people connect with their loved ones is we can be more lighthearted, maybe about things, because there's no death, there's no judgment. No one's judging you for anything. If there's judgment, it's just judging ourselves. It's just self-judgment, because there's no one really out there to judge. If there's no world, there's really no people. There's no us. Now that can be frightening to the ego. And that's why A Course in Miracles can be difficult to practice, because it's so ingrained in us. Everything in our experience tells us that this is real. And again, it doesn't mean we need to follow our natural scripts. Follow what you're naturally inspired to do, because that can be helpful to other people. And that's an important point, that if you have a passion in life or something that you love to do, absolutely, listen to that, right? You want to listen to that, follow that, follow that if you have an interest in something, because there's some way that will be a benefit and helpful to somebody else. It's a gift you're offering. And when you're using your natural talents, you're offering a gift to yourself, to the Holy Spirit, and you're helping others that need that form of healing or need that form of help. It doesn't matter what it is or what career it is. It's still being helpful if you're doing what you love. So that's at the world level. Do what you love, because it's helpful. And it keeps you also in a really sane frame of mind. In other words, when you're following your joy, you can't really be in fear at the same time. You're being of service. That's a really important point. You're being of service. I can't say this enough. For example, for me, what brings me the most joy is doing these teachings and writing songs and singing. performing, doing music, and writing songs and singing. And so I do those things. They bring me joy. You know what happens when I do those things? It's like a form of, you go into I go into like a channeling state, and you do that too. Everyone does that when they're really, really immersed in something they enjoy. You're raising your vibration, you're aligning more with the Holy Spirit and your right part of your mind. You're channeling when you're absolutely in the moment doing what you enjoy. It's a form of channeling, and you're being of service when you do that. So that's why we don't want to deny our experience here. And we have lessons to learn here. So the hardships come to show us that that's part of the script where, there's a lesson here for me to pay attention to. To the Holy Spirit, that's the only purpose for the world, is to use the world now, what we made, and those hardships that we go through, we can change the purpose of it and choose the Holy Spirit's perspective of what we're experiencing instead of defaulting to the ego. So again, one of my go-to phrases is the world was over long ago, and I'm merely mentally reviewing that which has gone by, which means, oh my gosh, wow, is there really anything to fear or worry about if this already happened? I'm just going through a script. But if I feel fear, that just means I have a belief about something that needs to be questioned. I need to inquire and go deeper. That's all. And go, okay, I'm making this very real for myself right now, but I have the power in my mind to choose again how I'm looking at this. And maybe it takes time, right, to undo a habit. We might have habits that we've developed over long periods of time. And so it takes the illusion of time to undo it. Do habits of thinking, habits of thought. So we can be gentle with ourselves and patient when that happens. And we can do that by just allowing ourselves to ask ourselves, why we're holding on to certain beliefs. And that can be even phobias, things that happen and we choose over and over again to feel fearful in a certain situation. Once we start allowing ourselves to love ourselves more, enough to even question, to even go, God, I'm ready. Okay, am I ready now to really question, why I'm holding on to these beliefs and this thought system? What do I have to lose by asking? To the ego, that can be very frightening to start questioning. And that's why it feels so terrible and scary and painful and dark, because it doesn't want us to really look at that. But I know that once we look at it and just allow ourselves to move through it, and you can remember that you always have that foundation of truth, that you've never left God. You really are safe in God at home. And you do have spirit guides. You do have beings that are guiding you all the time, even if you don't see them. But you can ask for help, ask the Holy Spirit for help. And it can help you in some very tough situations, right? Sometimes just saying, I surrender this, I give this to you, Holy Spirit. That's not weakness to surrender, not that kind of surrendering. You can just say, Holy Spirit, I don't know what's best. I just don't know what's best. I can't see the big picture, but I know you do. And I turn this over to you. You be in charge of this. At the same time, you just do the best you can and go through the motions of what you need to go through. But I always like to say, the Course says that we need mind training. We need mind training because we have been taught to default to, right, this what we call this reality, this world, and all of the rules of the world. And this doesn't mean we, shouldn't follow the basic rules, meaning like, you don't drive through a red light. That's like a common sense rule. I'm talking about those kind of rules where, at some level we all agreed, the one mind, at some level we all agreed to appear, right? To have an experience, in this world. So we're not being asked to not follow those kinds of rules, or else, right? You see what happens when you don't follow those, right? You get arrested, right? Or you do this or that. So why would we want to choose that? Even if the world's an illusion, why would we just go, oh, I'm not going to do that, right? That's not loving either, to anyone. So coming back to nothing happened. Nothing happened. The world was over long ago. That means that I can walk through now my life script and trust that everything that happens in my script doesn't happen by chance. There is no random act. Nothing happens randomly, the Course says. Nothing happens by chance. It's always there for a reason. So if we can get the lesson out of it, and how do we do that? How do we learn our lessons? Well, after we've brought up all the darkness to the surface and all the thoughts we're thinking with the ego to the surface, and choosing to look at it with the Holy Spirit, we forgive. We can forgive. This is where forgiveness comes in. We can forgive ourselves if we feel guilty or bad about something. We can forgive ourselves. And remember, forgiveness, as taught in the Course, is not about forgiving something outside of us. It's about saying, I remember that I'm dreaming, and I forgive my projections, which starts with a projected thought that, oh, I believe I'm separate from God. And now that thought, there can be spin-offs of that thought, such as, oh, now I believe this person that appears to be outside of me is the cause of my problems, or is the cause of my suffering. And it's very easy to do that. We all do it. But what happens when we do that is we give our power away. When we say someone outside of us is the cause of our problem, and when we're forgiving from that place of they're still guilty of something. Because that means if there's only one mind and only one of us in truth, that guilt comes just right back to us. We're still maintaining the guilt in our own minds that we're guilty. So another thing the Course says is, as you see him, you see yourself. As you think of him, you think of yourself. In other words, if we think about other people and think negatively about them and judge them, then if there's only one mind, that's how we're basically making a statement and saying, this is what I believe to be true about me, about myself. And so true forgiveness undoes that. True forgiveness is undoing. It doesn't do anything but undo. And that's what the whole Course is about, undoing. Reversing our thinking, right, with the ego, and getting in touch and getting familiar with our internal teacher, which the Course calls the Holy Spirit, which is in all of us. It doesn't matter what you appear to do or how evil you think you might be, or you did something terrible. Remember, God is perfect love, and you are part of the creation. And God doesn't think like that. God is not a human. So God doesn't think like humans think. God would just welcome you in his arms, using a metaphor, sort of a symbol, but that's what God is. God doesn't know of evil, doesn't know of this world. God is so completely opposite to this world, so that we would just be completely awestruck to remember that, to have even a moment of what that's like to be in God's love. And that comes with revelation. Maybe if those of you might have had a revelation, you would know that's an experience. So we can't understand at this level, why someone would choose something in their lifetime, you know, something very vicious or terrible, or, well, we can't see the bigger picture of what lessons are being learned. This is not about punishment at all. It's just about lessons. And when we learn them, then we're undoing and forgive, right? And true forgiveness, we start becoming the Christ. We start walking the world, and as the Course says, your forehead is serene and your eyes are quiet. You become an observer, a neutral observer of everything. Everything. So that's really what I wanted to address today, you know, in this talk, because there are a lot of questions about that idea the world was over long ago. And so I wanted to at least address that, and then some other things around that, and why that appears to be the case. Why are we mentally reviewing that which has already gone by? You know, because there's only mind. And yes, we're seeming to have a physical experience and we can feel ourselves physically, but it's explained to us that the more we undo the ego, the lighter and lighter and lighter you will feel. The lighter you will feel. It's almost like you'll have a foot in the door, a foot in this world, a seeming world, and a foot in spirit. But it's like you'll feel lighter and lighter, more dreamlike. Everything will feel more dreamlike. That's what's explained to us. And things that might have bothered you wouldn't bother you anymore. Or it just, if you feel upset, you just maybe don't feel upset for as long as you used to. And you start to go, oh, I used to feel bad about this. Or I feel, oh, it's going away. That's because you've been forgiving. When you forgive, that's what happens. And we can't, it might not happen all at once. You might not feel the effects of your forgiveness right away. You can, that's possible, but you might not. And so you don't, try not to be discouraged. In other words, keep going, because there are great benefits that we can't see happening at the level of the mind, which is really the only level there really is. But at that level, we can't see what's happening and how it's benefiting the whole sonship, because there's only one of us. So I hope this talk was helpful, and I wish everyone always blessings. And again, as I said, there will be more videos on different topics and different, maybe sometimes I'll include, like I have in the past, a meditation or two, or maybe sometime I'll share more of songs, but I have to figure that out, you know, a better way to do that on YouTube. But that, anyway, so I hope everybody has a wonderful, wonderful day, and there will be more videos, and I thank you for listening.